China could be at a 20-year high after a blind human rights activist escaped from house arrest and went and found refuge at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. Now, tonight, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is going to get on a plane and head over to China for high-level meetings. The timing is not fortuitous. The U.S. is furiously trying to smooth things over, trying to scramble an advance team to Beijing to start negotiations over the activist. His name is Cheng Guangcheng, before Clinton even arrives. Meanwhile, the United States hasn't even confirmed that he's in our custody.
Obviously, I'm aware of the press reports on the situation in China, but I'm not going to make a statement on the issue. What I would like to emphasize is that every time we meet with China, the issue of human rights comes up.
This is not the only Chinese crisis that, of course, is right now affecting the United States. The other one's been simmering now for over a month. We've been covering it a lot on this show. It started when British businessman Neil Haywood was found dead in a hotel room in China in November. Police now have ruled it murder. The government tossing a powerful communist leader, Bo Xilai, out of his office for corruption. The scandal has sparked rumors of a coup in China. Bo hasn't been seen since. His wife is arrested and now accused of poisoning Haywood when a business deal went bad. Speculation is growing. She could be about to put out a written confession. Chris Johnson is a former China analyst for the CIA. He says the two controversies have created the most tension between the U.S. and China since the Tiananmen Square crackdown in 1989. It's a significant statement. Chris Johnson is out front tonight. Chris, I have to imagine Hillary Clinton and Tim Geithner are not happy at all about having to go to China this week.
No, absolutely not. As your piece pointed out, this really is probably the most delicate moment that the U.S. has faced in its relationship with China in over 20 years. And it's a very complex situation. We had, of course, the tensions emanating from the Bo Xilai case. Obviously, the Chinese leadership is very distracted by that. And now this. It is not helpful to the situation at all.
And, well, I'm just curious because the U.S. seems to be sort of ratcheting it up. You know, I remember when the U.S. sold arms to Taiwan, and then China wouldn't even let the defense secretary at the time, Robert Gates, come into China. They were so angry about it. And now it looks like the U.S. is considering another arms deal to Taiwan, considering moving troops from Japan to islands in the Pacific that China seems to want to claim as its own. So what's the U.S. doing here?
Well, I think it certainly is a sort of seeming cauldron of these various issues, and my sense is that they're all sort of uniquely timed but not meant to, you know, send a deliberate message to Beijing. But of course, within China, that's how it will be interpreted by a lot of folks within the leadership. There's a large number of people there who take this sort of conspiratorial mindset that the U.S. is out to stifle China's rise, and they will see all of these moves as interconnected, even though they probably aren't.
Oh, well, yeah, there was a People's Daily in China today, of course, wrote saying that this was absurd speculation by the foreign media. I think the article said that the internet was causing so much competition for foreign media that they needed to report on this story in China and make it up, essentially.
Yes.
That's how pathetic it was. So certainly
yeah.
they're feeling like this isn't fair.
Yes, no, absolutely. And in fact, all of those sort of stories that appear in People's Daily, you know, the way to observe those is, of course, whatever they're saying, the opposite is true. So in that particular piece, they noted that, of course, there is no political struggle going on in Beijing.
Of course
and in
not.
fact, that shows that there is one going on in Beijing. And the interesting part of that, though, of course, is that the term political struggle is appearing in the front pages of, you know, the Communist Party mouthpiece. Again, that really hasn't happened in many, many years, and it shows the depth of the charged political atmosphere in Beijing right now.
Chris, I'm also curious. A lot of people have been very frustrated in the United States about the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, going over to China in the past and not talking about human rights. That the U.S. has, you know, gone ahead and done deals and moved ahead in its relationship with China and not talked about human rights. How is she going to avoid it this time when the United States seems to have a leading Chinese human rights activist in its embassy in Beijing?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. There's no way that they'll be able to avoid discussing the issue this time, and I don't think that's their intent. As President Obama pointed out, the U.S. Does discuss this issue quietly behind the scenes with China, and because they understand that that's usually the best way to make progress with the Chinese. In this case, however, of course, the U.S. is facing its own political election season coming up. Governor Romney has already spoken publicly on the issue, and I'm sure the Obama administration is very much feeling the pressure to do right by Chun and his family.
Yeah, but how do you prevent this from becoming a serious issue? I mean, she can't lie to their face. I mean, there's got to be a public resolution to this. I mean, if he's really in the embassy, he's going to come out. China won't be willing to lose face like that. I mean, how does this get resolved?
Well, that's the real pressure point at this point. Obviously, Assistant Secretary Kurt Campbell is in China right now trying to resolve the situation. Everyone hopes that that will be resolved before Secretaries Clinton and Geithner arrive on the scene. If they do not, it really does threaten to steal all of the thunder from these very important strategic and economic dialogue talks where important issues like North Korea, Iran, and Syria will be addressed. And this, of course, could upset all that. If he doesn't come out before then, I think it will be some time before he leaves.
All right. Well, thank